Perfect. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Kera Sanchez. I'm the editor-in-chief of Get Griefy magazine, and today we are doing a virtual roundtable session. And what started this conversation was the idea of National Day of Mourning. And as an American, this was a new concept for me. However, I feel like having this conversation about grief in the workplace and what the heck to write in condolence cards is such a huge conversation that we need to be having. And so I invited some members of our small business collective here today to talk to us a little bit about this concept, talk about this day, and walk us through all of the different things that we can do to make sure that we're supporting our colleagues at work and beyond. So I'm going to go ahead and start with some introductions and just share the floor with these wonderful humans that are here supporting grievers in many different capacities. But I'm going to go ahead and start with Janet. She is one of the co-founders of Bloomwell. And Janet, can you please just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your organization and also your group's journey?
Yeah, thanks, Kara, for the invitation. My name is Janet Wright. I'm one of the co-founders of Bloomwell, along with Dr. Mikhail Harris. We support organizations all over the world to navigate grief in the workplace and what that looks like and how to make it empathetic and supportive while respecting your own organization's cultural values and priorities. I have a long history with grief. My mom died when I was 18. So I've been a griever my entire life, and it's a real pleasure to be here to do this work. So thanks for inviting me.
Yes, and I have to add that one of the reasons why I even found Janet to begin with was your little project that you do on the side. It's not a little project, it's a big project, but your mother loss project. And I was able to participate in that. And as someone who has lost their mom, I thoroughly enjoyed participating in that and just reading through other stories of women who have also lost their mom. So we are multifaceted grievers here, and we are involved in many different capacities. So thank you for all of the work that you do. We also have Lisa here today. Oh my gosh, Lisa, you wear a million hats as well. Can you share?
Welcome to the life of an entrepreneur. I think we all have that in common, for sure. Thanks so much for having me. It's such good company to be in. I'm Lisa Kiefhofer. I have a lot of titles and a lot of roles. I'm a social worker, a narrative therapy trained social worker, worked in lots of different spaces over the course of the past 2+ decades. But I come to grief and my work in grief personally and professionally. Personally, have experienced a lot of profound losses. Probably the most profound was when my husband died when I was 40. And then with a good friend just a few years later, and even more recently have experienced losses as someone who's surviving cancer. And I took my personal losses, my work with individuals, my training in narrative therapy to create my company, Reimagining Grief, because my belief is that in our workplaces, in our culture, in our systems, it's the stories, the false myths and stories we tell about grief, and the gap between that and our real lived experience of grief that causes us so much suffering. So I do this work as a podcast host, as an author. I do also work in companies to help train grief leadership, work with individuals, retreats, all kinds of things, just because grief is everywhere. So my belief is we need to learn how to center aliveness in a world full of loss.
Precisely. Yes. Thank you so much. And Camila, I know you are here as well. Go ahead and jump in, share with us a little bit about your grief journey and everything that you're doing with Sorry for Your Loss.
Absolutely. So I'm Sorry for Your Loss. We are a grief support brand, just rooted in having honest conversations about grief. That really started with my cards because I just felt like there wasn't enough representation, particularly for people of color, that really just gave you a feeling when you saw the card. So I wanted something that would reflect that, and something from the grief support perspective, meaning sympathy is more of a sentiment and grief support is an action. So the cards actually take it a step further by having action steps that people can do so that they can support the person who is grieving, and also empowering the griever to say, hey, when someone does ask you, what can I do for you? Like, here are some things that you can actually tell them, like go ahead and involve that community that you have, because I've lost my parents, and that's what really got me into this, specifically my dad 4 years ago. And I remember being in a support group, and it was all women. We all lost our dads, and we were like, no one's helping us, but we're also not asking. So it was just like, we wanted support, but we didn't know how to ask for it, which is a problem I know a lot of us have. A lot of the time, we're busy supporting other people. So really wanted to provide a solution to the problem. And from there, it's just evolved into community events, as well as just bringing people together, because the big thing is that grief is just about losses that change you. For me and for all of us, obviously it's been loss of people, but when I think back, my grief didn't start with the loss of my parents. It actually started with other invisible scars that we just didn't talk about and I didn't recognize as grief.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what I love about what you're doing as well is that you're being extremely authentic with your grief, and you're sharing not just like the quote unquote grief, like you're sharing all parts and the legs of grief that stem, like issues that stem from grief. So, one of the latest articles that you wrote for the magazine had to do with, body weight fluctuations and all of these changes that our body goes through. And I thought that was so impactful because, people are going through these issues and they're like, what the heck is going on with me? But when we actually have these conversations out loud and normalize it, it's grief, and that's what happens. And it's okay to normalize these conversations and be honest about the way that it affects us. So you're doing everyone here is doing so much amazing work. But yeah, so we are joined together today to talk a little bit about the National Day of Mourning, or at least that's the jumping off point. We're going to talk so much more besides that. But again, so many of us are here from the United States, but Janet is up above the border in Canada. And she was the one that actually introduced this concept to me. And I was like, oh, wow, this is fascinating. So I don't know, are you just able to walk us through, like, what is Canada's National Day of Mourning? And maybe what can we as Americans take notes? Because I feel like it's...
For sure. Yeah. So April 28th is our National Day of Mourning, and it is a day where we recognize workers who have been injured, made ill on the job, or have died in service.
Okay.
So it really is a day that recognizes workplace death and injury, but also people who are affected by traumatic loss in the workplace. We lower our flags to half-mast. There are, not celebrations, but there's recognition across the country, particularly for those people who work in very dangerous work environments. This is something that they deal with on a daily basis, often, where people have lost their lives, coworkers have lost their lives at work. So it is a day that was established in 1991. It was a day that was established for worker safety and to improve worker safety. But I think it's a really important day where we can talk about grief in the workplace and what that looks like, because it manifests in so many different ways. And it's just a jumping off point, I think, for talking about grief and loss at work.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it makes it so that everyone is on the same page and they are able to have those conversations. And as we know, those conversations are so vital to making sure that employees feel valued and safe and secure with who they work with, but also from leadership. And so having these conversations and having these honorary days, they're much more important than what people would realize. So I guess, that acknowledgement piece, that matters, even when it's uncomfortable, or even when it's with people from work that maybe you don't know all that well. So I guess my question for the collective is, what do you think we can do about the fact that people do avoid talking about grief at work, or it's something that maybe they try to hide personally, or someone maybe come to work with a loss and people are like scrambling, like they don't know what to do?
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about it. I think that's the big thing. Like, it's very frustrating. Okay, I am a I don't want to say confrontational person, I guess. It's probably selfish of me because I'm just like, I'd like to get to the root of this. Like, I don't like to go around the block, around the corner. I'm just like, can we talk, right? So I'm probably uniquely positioned to talk about it because I'm just like, hey, let's have a conversation. But I think that you can only get more comfortable as you talk about things. And because grief, particularly in the United States, is so like, it's treated like a contagion. Like if I tell you that someone in my family died, then now grief is gonna jump on you. You already have it. You just don't know it. You grieved if you're alive, right? But you just don't know it. And so it's just like the lack of conversation and just asking. Like the other day I was at the library and I have a really great relationship with one of the librarians, and she was like, I'm so glad you're here because I wanted to ask you, like I have a colleague who someone just passed, but I don't want to like be awkward around them. And I said, simply just go to them and say, hey, I'm acknowledging that you had a loss. Is that something you're comfortable talking about, or would you prefer not to? Or are you comfortable with me acknowledging it, or would you prefer not to? That's it. I was like, they may say something, they may be able to answer the question. Maybe they won't, but at least you've like said that you acknowledge it and you're not pretending, you're not reminding them of the loss. They know they've had the loss, right? And not gonna be like, oh my gosh, my parents have died. I had no idea until you reminded me that. Right? Totally skipped my mind until you brought it up, right? But it's just simply having open dialogue. And I think we can get more comfortable and not worrying about having the right words, just not positioning yourself in the front, because it is about that person should be the person in the front of the conversation at that point.
Camilla, chef's kiss to that answer. I really think you touched on so many important things. I wanted to amplify something you said, especially because we're talking about this as a like Canadian culture and maybe American Western culture. Is I think in our culture, we've learned to equate discomfort with wrong or problem. And actually discomfort is usually just a sign we don't have practice at something. And so I think, and I say this, I was the clinical director of a big nonprofit when my husband died, and I was called back to work 2 weeks later and had to show up at work to supervise staff and work with individuals. And even in the helping profession, which is why I ended up doing this work, I noticed even my peers, clinical social workers, were uncomfortable around me. And even in some ways, of course, I was uncomfortable too. And it took me really quickly to realize everything that Camilla was just saying, which is like, let's get to the heart of it. I know I'm grieving the loss. They know I'm grieving the loss. The thing that's actually uncomfortable is that we're all walking around here pretending like this thing didn't happen. So then I don't feel human. I feel more isolated. You know, I one of my grief support mottos is show up, shut up, and listen, and keep showing up. Like that's what you need to do. And I think people get so hung up on the wrong words because they don't have practice that they don't say anything at all. And I always say not saying anything at all is saying something. Not saying anything at all is saying your pain is too much for me.
Yeah.
I can't relate to you. You make me uncomfortable. You're not welcome here. So like Camilla, I created a line of empathy cards when I first started my business. In the last couple of years, I collaborated with an extraordinary artist to create more beautiful ones because I do know that it's uncomfortable. But again, discomfort is lack of practice. It's not a sign that you're wrong. And if we're going to shift the culture, which we need to, because none of us get out here. I get out of here, you know, without experiencing grief many times, then yeah, that's the thing. So I love that you mentioned the, like, just do it uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And I would say, okay, I couldn't agree more with Camilla and Lisa. Everything that you've said, amazing. We talk about the elephant in the room, and that's that discomfort, right? And you've got to name it. Even if you just say, I feel like I don't know what to say, but I'm going to say something, because that recognition is so critical to the person who's standing in front of you who is in pain. Yeah. And it is about them. You have to make it about them and not about your own discomfort, right? Decenter yourself from this. And the other thing that I always tell people is please check your biases and assumptions at the door. Just because you have gone through something doesn't mean that that's what that other person is experiencing. Yeah. And please try to avoid the words "at least." I ask everybody, just take those words right out of your vocabulary. Okay.
For everything, not
No,
just grief,
for
by the
everything,
way.
for everything, but especially when you're talking to somebody who's grieving, do not say at least, because that immediately tells them, I'm uncomfortable. I want to shut down this conversation. I don't know what to say, and so I'm going to say something that is dismissive, and it just gets me out of this conversation really quickly. So those are all, like, everything you guys have said, I completely agree with, and I think that we really, as you said, we just have to have these conversations, and practice makes perfect. And the more we do it, the more comfortable we will be, for sure.
Yes. I
would say practice makes comfort.
Yes,
True.
practice makes comfort. This is true.
Yeah.
True. I actually just had an aha moment as I'm sitting here, because I realized that so much of this conversation is guided around like corporate work. But, I come from a position of working in a school system for like nearly 15 years. And a lot of times my experience was that the guidance counselors would kind of serve as a liaison, and the students would come in with a loss and they would go straight to their counselor and tell them what happened. And then the counselors would send all of the teachers an email and say, hey, this is what happened. And almost kind of sent the message of like, don't bring it up. And while on one hand, I understand, because you don't want to like trauma dump in the middle of class, right? And just like let the kid feel like there's a spotlight on them. But at the same time, I feel like that also takes away that communication between the student and the teacher, and allowing the teachers to be there and support them. And so I feel as if the counselors are coming from a place of they don't want the teachers to say the wrong thing. But I can imagine just showing this video to educators as a whole and talking about how to support students too. That's also a really important thing to make sure we're addressing, because what happens when grief is ignored? What happens when it's minimized? Like, are we able to talk about that? Because I think whether you're an adolescent, a young kid, or you're a full-fledged adult, grief is going to hit you. So what happens when people are not acknowledging your grief?
Well, and for a teacher, I would add grief brain is real. So it's really important.
Yes.
It's really important for a teacher to understand the kind of like the signs and symptoms of inattention and overwhelm and nervous system dysregulation and forgetfulness and all the things that are going to happen. So it's sort of a disservice, not just to the student, but also to the teacher. And it's kind of a setup for misunderstanding if the teacher isn't equipped with that information too. So
it's kind of funny how much there's like overlap, like from a managerial perspective with your employees. And,
as a teacher,
there's a ton of overlap there. But let's talk about that. Like, when we just ignore it or pretend like it's not there, what happens to the griever?
Well, what happens is the system we have now. First of all, I need like 3 T-shirts of all of show up, shut up, listen. I'm over here like, yes. And I will tell just come for the side. We don't practice. Oh yeah. So I written down a lot of your quotables are really good.
Thank you.
Thank you. But I think we end up in this position where shame is the jacket you put on. And be very clear, the system is designed to do this. Right. Like I'm doing a talk next month about like how we learn to like be shameful about our grief. And it all goes back to like over 100 years ago. We used to like grieve publicly. And then during the First World War, Woodrow Wilson basically told the widowers, he's like, so go ahead and instead of wearing all black, we're going to just wear an armband and a gold star. So you're not grieving, you're honoring the soldiers who passed, right? So it was a PR spin on grief, right? So here comes a stoicism of, now all of a sudden we're showing up stoic. And there were health implications, like Spanish flu came around, so you couldn't gather around the bed and have this communal parade like people used to. So there was health concerns as well. But then we get into Industrial Revolution, and this is when we get into the whole, okay, you got to get back to work. So we're programmed. Literally, you're starting kids with we're not going to talk about this, because if we actually talked about grief and we did it at a young age, and we actually showed people that you're going to be having these feelings of overwhelm, and you're going to sit in it for a little while, probably, everyone's not the same. Imagine what happens when everyone starts to realize that grieving is normal. What happens then society starts to shift, and then this productivity thing starts to take a back seat, because you're like, something's not wrong with me because I'm grieving. This is normal. So
Yeah.
now grieving becomes normalized behavior. And now we have a whole other set of problems because productivity is not the premier thing that we're concerned about. We're concerned about people and their health and well-being. This is what we're fighting against essentially. So shame is the jacket that most of us are wearing because, like you, Jen, I lost my mom when I was 19. I just kept moving. I remember my dad called me. I went to class. I didn't want to feel ostracized because I'm in college. And I'm like, oh, my mom died. So I already felt shame about feeling different because now I'm going to be a girl without a mom.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more, Camilla. So my mom died on the day I graduated from high school. And 2 months later, I started university. And it was like, I was basically told, don't miss a beat. Like, don't stop. And I did that for years. And it cost me enormously, physically, emotionally, my mental health. So much of that suffered. And I do, to your point, Kara, and I think, Camilla, you said it so beautifully, the system rewards us to be productive. The system tells us you need to show up, you need to be here, you need to be productive constantly. And we start that early at schools in that we don't talk about grief at school for a variety of reasons. But I think that's where grief education needs to begin and where our grief literacy needs to begin, because we're so grief illiterate as a society. I was just talking to a friend of mine who's in the Middle East. Her mother-in-law just died. And they have so many rituals that they do around their grief and around public mourning and the joyful celebrations that they have and, you know, the ritualized clothes that they wear. And I was almost wistful, not because she was there and she was having to go through this with her husband who's grieving the death of his mom, but just how beautifully the culture kind of supports this public mourning that I don't feel like I didn't have that when my mom died, not at all. And I feel like we're still reproducing this as a society where we don't have community. We don't have that public grief support that we all need. And we need that recognition that, as you say, Camilla, grief is normal. It's a normal, natural response to loss. And we have to just teach that at all, you know, ages and stages of life.
Yeah. Kara, you know, you asked us too, like, what's the cost to us when people don't show up? And both of you offered such important answers, and we can see why it's happening. So capitalism is some of the reasons why it's happening. Our obsession, and in my estimation, harmful obsession with individualism in the West is why this is happening. The cost is not just that we, instead of finding fault with the system, then we find fault with ourselves. And that's the shame story that Camilla's talking about. But it's not just the cost to the individual either. It's two things. One is that's a cost to our well-being, our sense of self, but then there's all the secondary losses that some of which are very unnecessary that happen. Friendships, communities, we maybe don't feel like we can be in our workplaces, the degradation of our physical and mental and emotional health because we're not allowed culturally to admit that we need help with those things. But the impact isn't just individual, it's collective. And I think we're seeing that in the globe this time when a collection of individuals aren't allowed to or feel seen and held. My graduate thesis was on holding space and bearing witness practices. So I really believe in the power of that, right? If we don't do that, then we're just a bunch of really pained, shamed individuals. And instead of tending to ourselves, then we are inflicting that harm. If I don't get to tend to my grief, then I'm not going to have empathy, allow you to tend to yours. And so I think we're seeing the cost. The cost isn't just to us and our emotional, cognitive, physical, emotional, spiritual well-being, our relational well-being, but the cost then amplifies because we are parents, we are neighbors, we are teachers, we are managers, we are politicians. And so we are like spreading it.
Yeah, it's like a ripple.
Like, grief is not a contagion. Our avoidance of grief is a contagion in a way. And the consequences aren't just ours, and they're generational. Many of us grew up in families where our parents didn't deal with their grief and we are now left to deal with it, or they didn't deal with their trauma. So I just want to name belonging is actually our core human inheritance. It's what we're meant to be. It's at the bottom, it's the base of our hierarchy of needs. And when we don't feel like we belong because we are ignored and people don't show up, the ripple effect doesn't just stop at our skin, you know, like it ripples out into the culture. And that's, I mean, if you need a reason to care and become more grief literate, which you should just because you're human, I think that's it. It's affecting every domain of our culture and our society, which means it's having a negative effect on all of us.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, I feel like as organizations, they need to have an open ear to this, because there's cultures for organizations as well.
Oh,
and,
100%.
Right. And we're bringing up capitalism. Well, if capitalism is king, then that's how they also are going to maintain their employees and not have so much turnover, is by respecting their employees and honoring them and caring for them and supporting them. And so it's like truly just a win-win, right? And but it's simple things that we can do to make people feel seen. And so I think that that's why we're actually here today, is to talk about the importance of cards and what we can write in cards, and also the fact that there is such a grand array, a diversity in cards that exist out there. Like, you don't need to go to the Hallmark store and pick out one that, you know, is just like, sorry for your loss, Camila, no pun intended on yours. But what I'm saying is that, you know, there's so much variety, and it's truly like an ice cream flavor, and you can pick the thing that matches that person. And so I think, if anything, Camila, what you did there is you did take the most simplistic phrase that exists and you used it as a spin, and you are creating something that's just so much more than that simple phrase. But yeah, I guess, what is something that we could write in cards for people that doesn't feel generic, or how can we select cards that match the need of the person? Like, what can we do?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's start by browsing, going to your local store, start by going to Camilla's website or my website and Here Tell Press, who I'm collaborating with for this project. But I think you can also, I mean, of course, I would love for you to buy my cards and buy Camilla's cards, but also, like, get out of your own way. I think part of what we need to do is stop having this false idea that there's this perfect right thing to say. I think the other thing that we need to do before we pick up a card, whether it's a blank card, whether we paint our own, whether we go buy one of our beautiful cards, is the reason we get in our own way is because we think our job in the writing of the card is to fix the person.
Yes.
Yes.
So when you can remember that your job is to show that person that you see them, I mean, I have this phrase that I use closing my podcast. It's on a card, like, I see you, I hear you, I'm holding you in my heart. If you recognize that your job is not to fix them, because their pain is actually what they need to experience to process and metabolize their grief, then you're going to be so much less, not that I don't want you to be thoughtful, of course, but you're going to be so much less rigid and hemmed in. So then you can say things like, and also, by the way, even if you haven't experienced a profound death loss, most of us know what it is to grieve if we're really honest with ourselves. So, like, what was a helpful thing someone said to you? It wasn't everything happens for a reason. Maybe I'll do it off camera. I'm going to hold up my middle fingers here. You know, it wasn't, at least, right? It was that somebody showed you with their words or their actions that I see you. I hate that you're in pain. I'm sorry you're having to experience this. I know your love for that person was real. I see you. Like, you can come up with lots of words. I have cards that says, you know, your heart is safe with me, or I offer some cards that help bring out the and, because we're such a culture of the binary. So, like, a lot of my language, even before I had this beautiful line of cards, I would say to somebody, you can be resilient and need a break. Mm-hmm. You can be grateful for what you had and grieving what you lost. So I think how we show up, whether we buy these beautiful cards that we each offer or we handwrite them on, is to get out of our own way, to get out of the assumption that our job is to fix them, and to think about, how can this person that I care about, even if it's a colleague, you know, you'll have different language for your best friend versus your colleague. How can I help them see that I see your pain, and that I'm here and I am a witness, and that I'm holding you in my heart? That doesn't have to be an overly personal thing. That's the place to start. We got to get out of our own way. That's what I think.
I totally agree. And I think it's very simple. Like, I don't know what to say, but I see you. Like, say you don't know what to say. Like, people just want to know that they just want to feel supported and seen. That's it.
Yeah.
to Lisa's point, they don't want you to fix, like, no one's going to be able to fix anything unless you're going to be able to, you know, bring my mother back, which as far as I know, you guys are not going to be able to bring my mother and father back. So, okay, we're clear on that. So then it's just the acknowledgement. It's the pure acknowledgement and the thought. Like, that is it. It doesn't need to be like a flowery sentence. Like, even I send cards to people sometimes and I'm like, I don't know what to say. I know this sucks, but I'm here. Like, I will be real to say that because I'm like, I don't have any words that are going to make you feel any better, but I'm just like, hey, I just want to acknowledge that I know you're going through this, or this is the anniversary maybe of when someone passed, or one of my friends, this is going to be her first Mother's Day without her mom, so I'm going to make sure that I send her a card or something. Right. So it's just about, I think, don't be sorry about the words, just come from the heart and don't try to fix it. And then, you know, find something that you think represents how you feel about them, or something beautiful. Like, quite honestly, I think if you see a card like that just represents something beautiful. Like, I know that my friend went on a trip to Paris with her mom, so maybe I'm not going to send her a grief support card. Maybe I'll send her something with Paris because I know that's the last trip that they took. So maybe it's something that has an extra layer of meaning to it as well, when you're thinking about how you want to show up for them.
And I think for leaders, I want to speak to the leaders watching this, because I am one in my organization, and it's really important to model that it's okay, that you don't know what the right thing to say is, and that's okay, but you're saying something, and you're telling your team, this person on our team is grieving, and we are going to show up for them in this way. And I think it's so important to model that behavior, and also for that person to feel held by their colleagues, by their peers, people that we spend, you know, for those of us who work in corporate culture, hours of our lives every week with these folks, right? Sometimes more than our own families at times. So it's really important for leaders to know that this is a space that you need to step into. It's crucial because everybody is watching what you're doing, and they want to know that if something bad happens in their personal life, you're going to be there to show up, and you're going to be able to say, we're thinking about you. Like, you're not here in the work environment, but we're thinking about you. And we want you to know that we're sending you all of our deepest thoughts, our strength, whatever the words are that you want to use. It's important to communicate that from the heart. I think that we have this idea that we're not allowed to bring ourselves into the workplace. We're not allowed to bring our hearts into the workplace, which is it's nonsense. Like, of course, you're carbon-based life forms. You're going to bring your heart into the workplace. This idea of this faux professionalism that everybody sort of hides behind, again, it's discomfort, right? It's discomfort masking as professionalism. And we just need to get past that to say, I see you. I know that you're going through a tough time. I'm here if you need something from me, especially if you're that person's leader. I'm here for you if you need something from me. That means the world to anybody who is grieving a loss and is outside the work environment, because they've got their backs.
Yeah, I wanted to add one thing, because I love that you said we bring our whole selves to them. Like, I don't know about you, but I didn't have like a drawer. Like, I'm gonna leave my grief right here before I look for a corporate job. Like, it's with me, like, it's right here, you know. But I would love it, and I think like something simple that leaders could do, or corporate cultures, like whether it's when you're hired or at some point, just saying like, have you had a significant loss? Or have you experienced a loss? Right. If you don't mind sharing, when did the loss take place? Right.
Put it on the calendar.
Put it there. And then how would you like to be supported? And doing that, like, based on the 5 love languages, right? Like, do you want, like, what do you know, some people are like, and not that you have to use that exact language, but like, do you want to be in contact? Would you prefer for us not to contact you? Because then you get to know precisely how your person wants to be dealt with in those ways. And then also, okay, if you know, and I managed teams for a decade, so you can kind of see when these things are coming up, where it's like, all right, if the anniversary or something's coming up, maybe you don't put Tamara on this huge complex job, or you check in with her and you're like, hey, I know that, you know, this thing happened, or I know that you have a significant day ahead of you coming up in a few weeks. I'm just checking in. They're adult, they can let you know. But do you know, I'm like, I would presume it would go far for other people. That would go so far. like
Yeah.
just that checking in, so you're treating me like a human being because you're going to need my brain power to get certain tasks and projects done, and I'm not going to be able to focus on certain things potentially, right? And then having that fear of not even saying that, and then you're seeing people in the workplace, the performance just increasingly goes down. And a lot of managers sometimes they manage projects, they don't manage people. So a lot of most times people that are promoted are the people that do things very well, but they don't manage people well. So then it's like, oh, they're not hitting these markers. But then it's like, okay, if this is your A+ or B+ performers and now they're not hitting these markers, a good manager should know, ooh, something's going on. But depending on what they have going on, they miss it. And now you lost this person. Now you're spending maybe upwards of 90 to 200K to get another person and train them, when a lot of these things are solvable, but they also require being proactive as well as leaders and adding these grief literacy things as a part of leadership because we are bringing it into the workplace.
Yeah. Can I add just one more thing? You guys are rock stars. I was just like, yes, I loved everything that you're offering. Two things that came up on top of what each of you were saying are sort of like, extending what you're saying, which is, it is important that leaders model. I always say this, policy is great. It's absolute trash if your culture doesn't match your policy. Like, yes, we need bereavement policies. Yes, we need grief literacy policies in our workplace. But if the leaders are not modeling, sending the card, showing up, having the conversations, then policy is trash because people follow what leaders do, not what the policy says. It's essentially important. And when I go into workplaces, which I do all the time, from like law firms to medical schools to hospice organizations, it's not just that it's not just that I want leaders to send the card or to have the talk with the team. What are they doing when they go through grief? Are they taking the time off? Are they acknowledging that they're struggling? Like, how are they modeling? Because if you tell them it's safe here to ask for a day off or to have, your leave scattered across time because nobody gets all their grieving done in the 3 days in the beginning that you're allowed because you haven't even had the funeral yet, they're going to watch how the leaders respond to their own grief. So it's not just how leaders respond to the grief of employees, but also themselves. And then just the one other thing I wanted to say about all the beautiful things about the showing up, the cards, the language we use, is, to me, the most essential part is that fourth part of my grief support model. It's the keep showing up. It's, to Camilla's point, is it the Mother's Day? Is it the anniversary?
Right.
My phone is filled with people's anniversaries of their death losses. So I can keep showing up because it doesn't disappear at year 1. In fact, sometimes year 2 is an even sneakier bee because everybody else has gone about their way. So yeah, that's what I just wanted to add to that.
I completely agree, Lisa. And when we go into organizations, we teach the same thing about continuing to show up. And to Camilla's point, this is part of your job as a leader, is to know who your people are and to understand what days are difficult days for them, if they're willing to, disclose that to you so that you can maybe lighten their workload or, support them if they need a day off. And I take my birthday off and I take June 17th, which is my mom's death anniversary, off because you know what? I don't want to work on those days because I'm not very productive, and why would I? And I'm at the point in my career now where I just tell people, listen, I'm not working those days, and this is why. So I'm lucky that I get to do that. But a lot of people don't feel comfortable doing that, or they're not in work environments where that's a safe thing to do. So I think, again, like, it's so important when you're showing up that you keep those long-term perspectives in your mind and understanding that writing a condolence card is the first thing to do. It shouldn't be performative. It should be something that is from the heart, and it is the first step in a long trajectory of supporting that person who, we have a duty of care to each other and to our colleagues in inside work and outside of work as well. So we want to continue to show up for them over the long term, and just that recognition just goes a really long way for something.
Absolutely.
You're missing someone.
Yeah, I feel like if you're in an organization, the key takeaway here is, humanize the experience and lead with authenticity, be extremely genuine, and don't just like it's a check in the box, like generic step. Like it needs to be true connection building. And the best way to do that, obviously, is to speak from the heart and create a message that doesn't need to be perfectly formulated. It's just truly seeing the person from where they are and genuinely being there to support them. Well, I know that we're going to be wrapping up here shortly, but I would, if either of you have some cards with you to show off, I would love for you to just show our audience some examples of what you have. If not, obviously I can give you an opportunity to at least describe a little bit about the types of cards that you have and where people can find them.
No. Camilla, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I chose 3 of them. This is my baby. This is the first card. Yes, and it is also, thank you. It's the first card, and it also is was a Louis finalist, which is like the Oscars of greeting cards, in the sympathy category. So this is the one that started it all, and I just love the image. I feel like a lot of people have they're like, oh, I get it. I feel supported. Beautiful. It feels like I get what's going on. So this is my baby. So the QR code is inside here at the bottom. When I was speaking about before about letting the recipient know that the person that sent this is there to support them. And then it also has ways for them to ask for support. And then this is my second favorite. This is the Jamaican Tree of Life. My dad is from Jamaica, and it just represents like family and legacy. And so I just wanted something that was going to be a direct tie to him, and they are 2 of my best sellers. So there are 3 others as well, but these are my 2 faves. If you want to see the rest, that's sorryforyourlostcards.com.
I will say that thinking of you is probably one of the easiest quote unquote like generic things to say when you don't know what to say, because it really does hit at the heart of seeing the person and they just feel like, oh, you're thinking of me. And so I think that is like the perfect like gateway card for people that are looking to support someone, but they don't know what to say. Like that's a great way to start. I'm thinking of you. So I love that. I think it's beautiful.
I love that so much. There's gorgeous. I'm so happy to have more cards in my repertoire now. I had a line of cards that were my own, and then a couple of years ago, the great woodblock print artist Rachel Crow from Here Tell Press invited me to collaborate on a line of reimagining grief cards. And so there's quite a large, and it was a really interesting exercise to think about. I'm very wordy, so my cards were very long, and with woodblock print, you have to be very succinct. And so we worked together to think about the imagery, but also the key core messages that we felt like grievers need. Of course, I love all my cards. I just pulled out a couple that I think are important. One is this idea about the showing up part. So this one says, I know this time of year can be hard, sending you love. So this could be Mother's Day. This could be the death anniversary. This could be the, holiday seasons, whatever that looks like. This is about really the keep showing up, the like, I'm seeing you, I'm still here. I know that grief is not linear and that it doesn't end at a time. So this one's been really a popular one. As I mentioned earlier, I have a couple, including a couple of and cards. I really believe in that power of and sometimes we suffer unnecessarily because we hold ourselves to one or the other, and people hold us to it too. Like, you should be grateful you had a love. I hear that all the time, and I am grateful that I had a great love, and I'm grieving that my husband is dead, So we have another one that I really love, because we live in this capitalist individual, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, get back to work, it's good for you culture. So we created this card. You can be resilient and still need a break.
Love that.
Oh, I love that.
Right? So we can grow, we can need those things. That's really important. This is a cleaner version because some of my cards had a little saucy language. So when I decided to collaborate with Rachel, one of the messages we were both really keen on offering is this idea that grief and grieving holds the multitude of all of the human emotional experience, not just sadness, that it's anger and rage and sorrow and longing and joy and, bittersweetness. And so we created this card. It's one of my favorites graphically, but also the message. It's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. And this is this idea that so much of our suffering is, I always say, in kind of the way we should all over ourselves. And sometimes it's this idea that we feel things that we're not allowed to or supposed to. And so those are just some of the cards. But again, like your beautiful cards and mine too, I think it's really so much more about that I see you and I'm acknowledging that wherever you are in your grief is exactly where you need to be.
Exactly. Yes. Well, and I know we had invited as well Angie Hansen of Butterflies and Halos, and she was not able to make it today. And I just feel the need to also shout her out really quick because she was one of the first, I guess, like handcrafted greeting cards made for grief that I personally came across with. And she has one in particular that I utilize all the time because if you follow Get Griefy, you understand that I very much lean on grief humor. It's my thing. And there are people in my life that also I can understand that they are approaching grief with that lens as well. Yeah. And so one of her cards that she has, it literally just has like a picture of like a casserole on it. And it says, "I don't know what to say. Let's go eat one of those dang casseroles." And I'm like, that is so true, because for whatever reason, when
so many casseroles,
dies, people just continuously drop off food at your house. And she's like, what? So great. I'm going to be sad and fat. But I love that it's all about just like sitting with the person. Like, let's sit down together. Let's just eat this and let's cry together. Right?
I love that.
So
I love that.
I just had to shout her out because I was sad. She has so much insight as well. But I'm very, very much glad that Lisa and Camila are here because, again, both of your insights are so valid and so important. And so, Janet, as we wrap up, I know you're here from the capacity of Bloomwell. Are you able to just talk us a little bit about what Bloomwell offers, and then maybe one key takeaway that organizations should have in mind when it comes to bringing up grief in the workplace?
Yeah, so we work with organizations to do training and consultation. We provide lots of learning opportunities through workshops and tailored educational offerings, as well as consulting services to any organization who wants to do a better job, a great job at supporting their folks who are experiencing grief and loss. And that comes in many forms, not just physical death of a person close to us. I think the biggest takeaway, I think Lisa and Camilla both said it, just say something. Anything that is supportive and is acknowledging that the person standing in front of you is going through something difficult. And you can use your own words. You don't have to use someone else's words. Make it about, personal to you and how to connect with that person. And I think that is going to make a world of difference to people who are coming back into the workplace, whether they want to be there or not. They're there and they want you to see them and acknowledge their loss. It's really important.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I know Lisa and Camila, you are so much more than the card. So please feel free to jump in and add anything else, because I know that you both also have worked with organizations as well. So if you have any other takeaways or things that people can keep in mind, feel free to add.
I feel like we've said it all through this conversation. It is an honor to work, and I particularly I do a lot of corporate work, but I particularly like working in helping organizations. So I work with like medical school residents or hospice organizations or other social worker organizations, because I think they're really at the front lines of things. And unfortunately, writ large, I'm not saying all, but a lot of our helping systems, from the medical to social work to psychology, have really not caught up on grief literacy. And to work with humans is to work with grief. And so, though I work in lots of organizational types, I think that's kind of where my heart is, just because it feels like those are my people. Yeah.
And I think we've said it. I agree. I've said it. I think let's just talk about it. And I'll just use Lisa's words, that discomfort is a sign that we don't have practice, and we just need to practice more so that we can get better at showing up for others and ourselves. And I love also too the fact about, like, I just wrote down like, what's the communal cost of grief, and not about us grieving, but just more so like, what's the communal cost of ignoring grief, I guess would be better.
Yes.
Right. But that's what it is. And I'm like, ooh, that just got my mind just going with it's like, it's cost of grief is very expensive. Okay. to all
Camilla,
of us.
let's co-author a little essay on that. How about
Yeah.
that? That'd be amazing.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
that'd be awesome.
Oh my gosh. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to be sure to link everyone's websites and organizations, greeting cards in the notes of this. And I'm super excited that we were just able to come together, collaborate, talk about the important things, and hopefully this reaches organizations or people that need the support. And then clearly, if you're still not ready to do this on your own, you need some training wheels. You have excellent people here that are able to help. So
thanks for hosting us and
Yeah.
for all the work that you do
Yeah.
at Get Griefy and helping
Yes.
us all amplify the work that we're doing, because this is part of what we need to change the kind of collective culture. So thank you, Kara, for
absolutely.
hosting
Thank
us.
you, everyone. All
Thank
right.
you.
We will see you guys later.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.